So, continuing on, there's a lot of slides in this chapter. Holy crap! So this is a fancy way of saying bones are still growing, right? Um, so growth plates at the ends can be weak spots, which can provide issues with future growth. Green stick fractures we've talked a lot about is where the bone doesn't break cleanly; it breaks like a green tree, like a green tree branch or stick, right? Where it's kind of got those stringy connections. Um, but we're going to treat them the same basic principle as adult, right? We're going to splint them. We're going to check for CMS, make sure that they have circulation, okay, full traction if we need to, etc. Okay, pain management. Okay, we're not going to get into the Wong Baker Faces pain scale too much, but look for clues that they're in pain, right? Wincing when you touch, right? When we're palpating, same as with adults, right? That's not rocket science. Okay, so rice, right? Splint if we need to, and calming the patient down and being good, nice to them goes a long way towards relieving pain. It really does. Okay, deep breaths. Talk to me. I know you're in pain. Tell them what you're doing. All that good stuff goes a long way. Okay. Um, yeah. Triage. Triage is triage. You can look up Jump Start if you want, but it's the same principle just with kids. Okay. Green is minor. Yellow is delayed. Right. Which means they're relatively stable. Red means they're critical, dying. Black is deceased or they don't have a chance, right? So same as always. So triage, there it is. If you want to look at Jumpstart, you can pause it and look, but it's very similar to what we've covered on triage. Okay. Child abuse and neglect, it's out there. It really is. We are obligated reporters. I am as a teacher. I am as an EMS also. If I see something, it's my obligation to say something, right? So you don't have to walk into the room and get, you're abusing that kid, right? Generally, it happens. You talk to either law enforcement or you talk to the hospital, right? And they start the process. But realize that you do need to say something, okay, if you suspect something's going on. So we always joked about our boys running, they 100 miles an hour, run around. Their legs always were covered in bruises and scrapes, and because they just, Tate still is, my little guy. 100 miles an hour all the time, always in the summer, all bruised up, and we're like, God, they're gonna think, right? That's one thing. But if there's a reason for you to suspect that there's abuse going on, you need to say something, okay? Whether it's law enforcement or report it at the hospital, you need to say something, okay? So child abuse, signs of abuse. We're going to go through some of that here. Okay, injury typical for age. 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old boys, they're going to be covered in bruises, right? And girls too, for that matter. But 150 miles an hour everywhere they go. Likely to trip, fall once in a while, skin a knee. It happens. But be looking for things that don't make sense, right? Injuries that don't make sense. That's kind of what we're looking for. Okay, or Jimmy fell down and he's got a broken leg, sprained wrist. If it doesn't make sense based on what they told you happened. Okay, drugs, drinking, drunk parents, right? All those things. So if you see weird related, when a child's in pain, injured, they're going to want their mother or father, right? If something just doesn't seem right when you're there, okay, document it. So document it, and if it feels like it needs reporting, report it. Big one here. Sorry, I skipped over this one. I didn't mean to. Okay. Old injury. They finally call 3 days after, right? And again, that does happen sometimes, but it's a little suspicious, right? When Jake broke his wrist last year, we didn't think it was he was just playing at a friend's house and he tripped and fell and didn't think it was too major, but we thought, well, we better bring him in. We were going to wait. It was a Friday. We were going to wait and bring him in on Monday if he needed. Well, we decided we better take him in on Friday evening to urgent care, and sure enough, he had a broken wrist. It happens, but just know that and thankfully I've never been to much for child abuse cases, but um, I'm told that you kind of get the feeling things don't add up, and you kind of get the feeling that something's not right. So trust that feeling. There you go. Multiple different injuries at different stages of healing, right? You show up and the kid has a nasty bruises that appear to be healing. He's also got a broken wrist, and he's got tenderness from an injury 5 days ago, right? So just be aware of that. Burn marks, right? If they've ever been burned by something. Okay, I couldn't imagine what type of horrible human being it would take to burn their child, but it does happen. So be looking for that. Level of consciousness issues, or does the kid look healthy, right? Clean, look healthy. Is there any bleeding, unexplained bleeding, right? What's the home look like, which isn't a great indicator itself. Our house is a dump half the time, but there's a difference between messy and, oh my God, that house hasn't been cleaned in 5 years, right? Just know that some of those, they're not necessarily indicators, but they can be indicators of something going on there, right? If you want the mnemonic to memorize, you sure can. Look at this. But we all kind of know what suspicious stuff looks like. So be aware of that. Read through this is not a bad thing to know, but not expect you to memorize that. Bruises, right? Where are they? What do they look like? Are they old? They new? Burns too. I mean, and burns happen. Kids do touch things they shouldn't. They spill stuff on them. But if the burns are in sensitive areas, a lot of times that's not accidental, right? Burns that look like a glove, which means hit with something hot, or like a friction burn, twisted on their arm or something. So just be aware of that. Burns are a real. I don't know that they're common, but a real standout sign. Fractures. Okay, kid doesn't trip and fall and break their femur or their humerus, their upper arm, right? When you fall out of bed, fall forward, put your arm down. It's usually your forearm that gets broken. So major bones take major trauma. So remember that as far as suspicious stuff goes. Most people, elderly maybe, most people don't fall out of bed and break stuff. So if they said the kid fell out of bed and he has 2 broken ribs, a broken arm, and broken ankle, that doesn't make sense. So shaken baby syndrome. Okay, look for petechia, hemorrhaging in the eyes. A lot of times there. Head trauma, they might have tenderness, pain, or weakness in the neck, head. It can be a bad deal. So neglect, I would assume know what neglect is. Basically, you're just not doing what you should do, right? And it's odd we mention this life's necessities here when there are actual homeless human beings that don't have it. But okay, people should have clean water, clean, decent clothing, right? Shelter, the ability to shower, medicine, right, and feel safe. Failure for a parent to provide that is considered neglect. So keep that in mind. Other indicators of abuse, right? Kids are withdrawn, fearful, they lash out, right? Constant story of, I had this accident, that accident, I got hurt doing this, I got hurt doing that. Stories that just don't always jive. We are obligated, right? So our job is to report to law enforcement, or the other place we do is the hospital, and then the hospital will contact Child Protective Services. Okay, a couple of times we've contacted our medical director, and he's taking care of that too. But generally, we move this up the chain, right? Sexual abuse. Okay, I hate to say it, but always it's a consideration, right? So just like all sexual abuse, right? We don't want to examine, if we don't have to. We're not going to clean anything. Just take care of the life-threatening stuff and get them to the hospital to be assessed. Right? Same thing. Generally going to want an EMT of the same gender, or a police officer, or something. So the problem here with having a parent with necessarily is depending on who the suspect might be, right? Um, if it's a parent or a relative or a friend of a parent, sometimes that can be a tough. So you're going to want to have a police officer or a EMT of the same gender along all the time. SIDS. So SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome, unknown, right? Unexplained even after autopsy. About 3,500 infants die annually, right? But there's been a big push, and it was while I was a kid. Backs are best. That was a huge thing. You want babies to sleep on their backs on a firm mattress, not a soft mattress. We shouldn't have blankets in there. Shouldn't have stuff that they can suffocate on. Okay, and I can tell you right now, it's horrifying. Jake would not sleep on his back. He was a belly sleeper. You'd put him over for tummy time, and he would conk out. And so eventually we let him sleep on his belly, and it was horrifying. We didn't sleep much that first week. But we, some of them do, but it's terrifying because you hear back is best, back is best, back is best, and it is because it prevents stuff like that, right? Risk factors are low birth weight, any issues they had when they were born, right? Mother younger than 20 for development issues, sometimes for neglect issues. There's a variety of reasons, but that's just kind of a number that sticks out there if you have a SIDS case. Can occur, doesn't have to be at night sleeping, it can be during the day, it can be any time. It is possibly a crime scene, right? We show up and baby's found dead, we're going to have to preserve that as an unknown death. So we also have to manage the family and the patient, so it becomes a complicated thing. Okay, SIDS, right? Unresponsive, usually cyanotic, right? Not breathing. So we're going to work it like we always would, right? So they may be, depending how long they've been there. Usually these are found quickly because people are monitoring the babies, right? And they don't go all night long without being found, but sometimes they do. So if there are obvious signs of death, we're going to call medical control. If not, CPR, just like we always do, right? So note any bruising or anything you might see, and go to work like you would, right? Scene assessment when you've got child abuse or neglect or anything like that. Note anything you see about the house, about the family, anything that might not make sense. Okay. Obviously, it's going to be hard on the family, right? Sudden death of an infant, it's going to be hard on us. So let them grieve, and then we will. That's something we do afterwards with our debriefings. Okay. So depending on, a big thing here is, why aren't you doing anything, right? If that baby is obviously deceased, or that patient in general is obviously deceased, you're going to deal with the why aren't you doing anything. So you kind of have to, explain, unfortunately, what's happening and why. So yeah, it'd be a bad day for everybody. I'm not going to sugarcoat it there. So don't speculate as why. Don't say, well, here's what I think happened, right? It's SIDS. You call it SIDS. You treat it as SIDS. Obviously we're going to write up a report, and if we have suspicions, that's going to come into that part. But we're not going to say in front of the parent, well, we think you shouldn't have had that blanket in there, right? Or anything like that. So, yeah. So, yeah, do what you can, right? Use the child's name, right? Not the patient or the baby or the kid, or, talk to family members, sit down, talk to them, right? If they're sitting, you sit. Use concrete terms, died and dead instead of passed on. You don't know how they feel, so don't say you know how they feel. It makes sense. That's a common thing that people are like, I know how you feel. Well, unless you've been in their shoes, you don't. So if you have, unfortunately, then you could, say those words, but otherwise don't. Offer to call family members, clergy, right? Don't leave the baby sitting there, laying there. Cover them up, right? Wrap them in a blanket. Let them hold them, right? So, but you got to leave that. Do not if you intubate them, you got to leave it.